So today we're going to look at this Magnificat by Guerrero. And those of you, there's a couple here who have heard a little bit about this piece before, so maybe you could let the other people answer first if you already know all the answers, okay? Like Mateo. Mateo hasn't been here for these. Yeah, raise your hand if you haven't been here for these before. Okay. So let those people answer first, okay? And if they get stumped, you can help them, okay? So, let's see here. Mateo, what is a Magnificat?
Okay, it's was a prayer. Did we say it at the end of Vespers, right?
Say it in Vespers, yeah.
Did we say it at the end of the Vespers?
Have you been to
Sunday
Vespers at St. Vitus?
I did, yeah, a few times.
I think it's kind of the highlight of Vespers. I really do.
Yes.
It's kind of the highlight. Even in the New Rite, they didn't get rid of it. It's still there. It's kind of the highlight of Vespers, okay? And it's called Our Lady's Own Hymn because it is her words recorded in the Gospel of St. Luke, okay? Now, Mateo, how many times have you been to Vespers, approximately?
About like 10, 12 times.
Okay, Grace, do you normally attend?
I used to a lot, but I don't think I did a lot afterwards.
And Renee, you usually go, or you used to?
Well, I went every Sunday for the first few months, and then when Iffy, got a handle on it, I stopped coming because I'd have to go home, take my wife home, and come back, and so it's kind of tough.
Hey, don't disclose any personal information. This is for online.
Gotcha.
Recording.
Okay, so Kylie, have you been to Vespers?
I think so. I think Jordan and I went a few times before we had Zita.
Okay. So what happens is at the end of Vespers, I usually play the organ. And that's to fill up the silence because the servers and the priest have to do a lot of incensations. And in other rites, they have even more incensations than we have in the Roman rite. But in any event, it's to fill up the silence, okay? But what we really should do is sing a polyphonic Magnificat so that we don't have any silence and that the music I won't be improvising because the music will fit perfectly to the ceremony. And so that is what we're going to talk about today, okay? So Mateo, first question of the day. If I asked you one reason we're learning a polyphonic Magnificat, what would you say?
That you want to sing a polyphonic Magnificat at the end of the Vespers?
Yeah, but
yeah,
because it will what? It'll
what do you mean?
Fit the action of the liturgy better, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
because it'll have the proper length. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
You could also say that you don't want to hear me improvise on the organ. Okay? Any of those are correct answers. Okay. We want to try to do it once a month. I think we have enough singers, and we're at home at the moment, so we can kind of practice this. It's a hard piece, but I think we have enough singers that we could do it maybe once a month, and we could sing in the church there if everything works out. Whereas, because of our temporary church, we don't usually get to sing in the church, but we could do it for Vespers. If we did it for solemn Vespers, we could be singing in the church like we did at the symposium, okay? Okay, so we know then you're very smart because you know what a polyphonic Magnificat is, and most people don't. So you're already learning a lot of cool stuff, okay? Now, I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to look at this piece, okay? Now, who wants to tell me let's do this way. Kylie, what mode is this piece in? I'll give you a hint.
7A.
Well, actually, mode 7.
Mode 7, not A.
Yeah. Mode 7 is what it's in, okay? Kylie, how many church modes are there?
8.
8.
No,
Exactly
is
right.
that right?
Exactly
I
right.
don't know how I knew that. Maybe you told me.
In Greek, they call it the octo ekos. 8 church modes. How many church modes are there, Bernadette?
8.
How many church modes are there, Mateo?
8.
How many church modes are there, Grace?
8.
How many church modes are there, Renee?
8.
Now, you could actually break those down into 4 modes. Did you know that? Because 1 and 2 are basically the same. 3 and 4 are basically the same. 5 and 6 are basically the same. 7 and 8 are basically the same. So you could break those down into 4 basic modes. That's what some people have tried to do in recent times. And you get into a lot of theory about that. For example, mode 1 ends on D and mode 2 ends on D, but mode 1 goes a little bit higher than mode 2, and mode 2 goes a little bit lower. Okay, are we clear or not?
Clear.
Okay. Enrique, what did I just say?
You said that both modes 1 and 2 ends on D, on Re, but mode 2 is usually lower than 1.
Exactly. So here's my question, Enrique. Are you ready for this?
I hope so.
How do you classify a piece of chant if it goes high and low?
Well, I don't.
Well, what if you have to? What if you have to?
Answer.
I'll ask Jeff.
No, seriously, what would you do?
That's a good question. I don't know. I probably go for odd, even odd one.
Well, so you don't know which one it should go. If it goes high and low, there's no way to classify it. Is that correct?
I don't know. There might be a way, but I don't know if there is one.
So there's 2 ways that you could look at. Okay, you could look at what's called the tenor.
Okay.
We're not talking about a human being when we say tenor. Tenor has different meanings. Did you know that,
Yep.
Colette?
Yes.
I don't like the tenor of your answer.
Sorry.
Tenor has many different meanings, and when we say tenor in chant, we're talking about a middle note that the song likes to hover around. Okay. The only problem is that some people don't believe in those. Some people just don't think it's a real thing, and I understand why, because sometimes it doesn't seem to hover around any note. Okay, so let's say that the tenor doesn't help you determine the mode. It doesn't seem to hover around any note. Then you just end up having to choose whether it's mode 1 or 2. Now, doesn't that mean, Jacqueline, that you could have chants that are assigned to more than one mode? If Enrique puts it in mode 1 and Mateo puts it in mode 2, doesn't that mean that you could end up having chants that are assigned to multiple modes? Enrique puts it in 1 and Mateo puts it in 2.
Yes.
Yeah, it does. So if you look in the olden days, 1,000 years ago, the chants were always organized according to mode. And if you look in those books, those toneries and those other books, sometimes one person places a chant in one section and another person places a chant in another section. Okay? Is that clear or not? So in that sense, you know, there's a little bit of wiggle room. Now, have any of you ever heard of a composer named Frederic Chopin?
Sounds familiar.
Raise your hand if you
Yes.
have never heard of Chopin. Kylie, you have, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay, everyone has.
I
Good.
just figured out how to raise hand, but I don't need to.
I was just going to kick out anyone who's never heard of Chopin. No, just kidding.
Even Zita knows Chopin.
Chopin is a very, very great composer, okay? But if you look at his ballades, for example, the second ballade is sometimes called F minor, sometimes called A flat major. So it's not as if this is a problem only unique to Gregorian chant, okay? So we are talking about a mode 7 piece. Kylie says it's mode 7, okay? Now, how many church modes are there, Sarah?
8.
How many church modes are there, Colette?
8.
Just making sure you remembered. Now, how many psalm tones are there, Renee?
Psalm tones.
Yeah.
8.
I would say 9.
Okay.
Because you have da 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 dee 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 dee. Tonus peregrinus is a very popular psalm tone. It's named after a bird, okay, a peregrine. We talked about this. Peregrine means wanderer, someone who wanders, or pilgrim, okay? And do you remember, Enrique, why that is? I told you last time.
Yep. Should I say it?
Yes.
Because it doesn't stabilize in one sole tenor note.
Exactly. It cannot make up its mind which reciting tone it has. At first it goes da 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 dum on that note, da 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 dum, and then it goes da 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 dum. That's why it's called the pilgrim tone, the wandering tone, the peregrine tone. Okay?
Oh, okay.
So I would say there are 9 psalm tones because you have that extra peregrine tone, tonus peregrinus, okay? So how many church modes are there, Jacqueline?
8.
How many psalm tones are there, Kylie?
9.
9, okay. But with this one, you already said we're talking about mode 2, correct?
Mode
Kylie?
7. Yeah, you said mode 7.
So
You
mode
said
3,
2.
mode 3, right?
No, 7.
Okay, 7. It's very important that you understand which mode this piece is in, because by the time we're done today, okay, by the time we dismiss this meeting, you have to memorize a very important sentence, which we're going to memorize right now. So, Matteo, repeat after me.
Yes.
In this Magnificat,
In this Magnificat,
the composers
the composers
take a mode 7 psalm tone,
take a mode 7 tone song.
mode 7 psalm tone,
Song tone, okay. Take a mode 7 song tone
and stretch it out
and stretch it out
and place it in each different voice.
and place it in each different voice.
Exactly. Now, if you want a bonus points, you can add on something to that. You can add on to that sentence. You could say that with each successive movement, the psalm tone becomes harder and harder to hear. Okay? So in movement 2, it's very easy to hear. 4, it's a little bit harder to hear. And it gets harder and harder to hear. By the final movement, verse 12, you can't even really hear that it's there. Okay? So that's our sentence that we all have to know. Okay? So, Kylie, what's the sentence?
In this piece, the composers have taken the psalm tone. Sorry, I'm paraphrasing if I'm recalling correctly. Have taken the psalm tone and stretched it out and placed
Which
it
psalm
in
tone? Which psalm tone?
7.
Psalm tone 7.
Psalm tone 7 and
Uh-huh.
placed it into each voice. And then as each movement goes by, it becomes less and less easy to hear the psalm tone.
Awesome. Okay. Grace, which voice gets the mode 7 psalm tone in verse 2?
Verse 2.
Can you see my screen or not?
Oh. Soprano carries mode. I'm bad with Roman numerals. It
Take
was
a
like
guess.
soprano. Here is it. Soprano.
Soprano carries mode 7 psalm tone. Exactly
Okay.
right.
7.
Renee, which voice has the mode 7 psalm tone in verse 4?
Tenors.
Jacqueline, which voice has the mode 7 psalm tone in verse 6?
Tenors.
Mateo, which has the psalm tone in verse 8?
Bass.
And Colette, which has the psalm tone in verse 10?
Soprano and tenor.
That's right. And Bernadette, which has it in verse 12?
Alto.
Yes, you're exactly right. Okay. So we're already learning some cool stuff. If I block this, it doesn't block, right? If I put up another, this is not being blocked, right? You can still see my screen?
Yeah.
Mhm, yes.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. Okay. So this is already quite an interesting piece because he's placed it in different voices to add interest, okay? Counterpoint is hard enough to write as it is. I mean, it's very difficult to write even 2 lines of counterpoint, even a couple measures of them, okay? But then to have a grand plan and to make it into a masterpiece is really amazing. It's kind of, it's easy to look at what they do, but it's hard to do it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's kind of like saying this trapeze artist, you know, stood on one leg, rode a bike, juggled flaming torches while he was blindfolded. Okay, it's easy to describe what they do, but to actually do it is a little different story, and to make a masterpiece out of it, okay? So we'll come back to this page, but first of all, we need to make sure we remember what mode psalm tone 7 sounds like. So, Sarah, why don't you sing that?
Uh-huh.
Here, I'll give you the key.
Oh, that is so helpful. Et exultavit spiritus meus, in Deo salutari meum.
Good. What mode is that?
7.
Okay. Renee, you sing it.
Et exultavit spiritus meus, in Deo salutari meo.
Good. Mateo.
Mhm. Sorry. Et exultavi spiritus meus. And I don't remember the second part.
Can you see it?
Sorry. Yeah, I can see it. In Deo salutari meo.
Okay, that's good. Don't forget about the beginning, though. The beginning is the part that goes, Et exultavit, et exultavit. Try that.
Et exultavit.
No, 2 notes on et and 2 notes on x.
No, okay. Can I hear it again?
Et ex.
Et ex.
There you go. Et exultavit.
Spiritus meus, in Deo salutari meo.
Hey, Grace.
Et exultavi spiritus meus, in Deo salutari
Not in,
meum.
not in, not in,
In.
not in.
In.
Try again.
Et exultavit spiritus.
Grace, listen. Et exultavit.
Et exultavit spiritus meus, in Deo salutari meum.
Kylie.
Et exultavit spiritus meus, in Deo salutari meo. In salutari meo. That end,
Salutari meo.
salutari meo.
Go down on the, hold on a second here.
Salutari.
Don't forget to go down on that one.
Okay. Salut. Oh, hold on. I'll look at mine. Salutari meo, meo.
Good. Can we call this learned, or do we need to have every single person do it? We okay?
I think so.
Okay. Jacqueline, you know it. Colette, you know it. Bernadette, you know it. Enrique, you know it. Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Now, your brain should already be thinking about the fact that how can a composer take something that's so quote unquote boring and make it into a beautiful masterpiece that lasts a long time? So that's what you should already be thinking to yourself. And of course, they succeed beyond a shadow of a doubt, okay? So a number of you have sung the verse, the mode 7 psalm tone, okay? Now, what am I looking at up here, Jacqueline? What is this?
I'm not sure.
Okay, you're not sure. Well, are these birds?
Yes.
Okay, and what is this fancy letter?
That's looks like a C or an E.
It's an E, okay? This
Oh, I see
is
it. Okay.
what the music looked like back in the 16th century. This is what the singers sang from, okay? They only saw their part. They didn't see anyone else's part. And it was a beautiful way of doing it because it enabled you to see the line, the moving line. And it's never been surpassed. So now that we've all sung mode 7 psalm tone, let me sing for you the soprano line, basically kind of how it goes. Et exultavit spiritus meus in Deo salutari meo. Now, what does that sound like, Renee?
Sounds like the psalm tone, mode 7.
It's clearly based on the psalm tone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you have stuff like in Deo salu, all on the same note, right? That's not normal music. If you bring in a piece to your composition teacher and it's just like in Deo salutari meo da 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 da, all on the same note, all on the same value, your composition teacher is not going to be happy, okay? That's not a normal melody. But the composer places it in which voice again? Enrique? Verse 2, which voice?
Soprano.
Soprano. So he places it in soprano, and he creates this amazing masterpiece. It's just beautiful. Now, have any of you had an opportunity to listen to this piece for the practice recording?
Fortunately, no.
Only just once right before this with all voices, not just like a single voice track. But
Grace, you haven't listened to it at all?
I kind of was forced to go outside and suntan today, so.
Yeah, but we've had this for like 2 months.
I know. I just thought I'd never get Zoom, but then I was finally allowed to do so.
All right. By the way, we have someone from the Philippines that's joining us, but I can't see her. Is she there?
I see the name.
I admitted her, but is she there?
I can see you, Jim.
Oh well, it might be a technical error or something. Okay, so who hasn't said the sentence yet? Grace, what is the sentence that we need to memorize before we leave this place?
It has something to do with Mode 7 being placed in each of the voices. That's as much as I can remember at the moment.
Okay, Bernadette, help her.
The composer of this piece, they take mode 7 and they stretch it out and spread it over
Mode 7 what?
several psalm tone and spread it and divide it with different parts.
So like you'll have a piece, you mean, and all the different parts will all have mode 7 psalm tone? Is that what you mean?
No, different times parts.
Different verses, right?
Yes, different verses.
And as you go on, it gets easier and easier to hear that psalm tone, correct?
Wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It gets harder and harder.
Okay. Just making sure we all know the sentence. Okay. So before we go back to the sentence, we have to talk a little bit about geography here. Let's see. Share this. Who wrote verse 2, Renee?
Guerrero.
Who wrote verse 4, Mateo?
Morales.
Who wrote verse 6, Bernadette?
Guerrero.
Who wrote verse 8, Kylie?
Guerrero.
Who wrote verse 10, Enrique?
Palestrina.
And who wrote verse 12, Grace?
Guerrero.
Okay, so are those all the same composer, Jacqueline?
No.
No. So why is that the case? Why is this piece, it's one piece written by many people. How does that work? Jacqueline?
Oh, you're asking me. I'm sorry. Different parts were taken from different pieces and put together.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. I took different parts from different pieces. Now, why would I do that, Sarah?
Heaven only knows. Why would well, in order to have them each contain mode 7?
No. There's
Okay.
hundreds and hundreds of Magnificats that contain mode 7.
Okay.
We talked about this last time, and I just looked it up, and I was actually correct. It comes from St. Thomas Aquinas. St. Thomas Aquinas said, "Hominem unius libri timio." I fear the man with one book. I fear the man of a single book. What would that phrase mean, Kylie? I fear the man of one book.
Fear the man of one book. Coming from Aquinas. Because the one book is from God. And he's one man and you should fear him.
Well, let me put it this way. Let me put it a different way. What if I tell you that I'm a sports expert, okay? I'm an expert at sports. but the only player that I know about is Pete Sampras, okay? Pete Sampras was a tennis player who could hit the ball faster than anyone else alive, okay? So he was unbeatable on certain courts. If the court was certain things, he could not be beaten because they literally could not return his serves, okay? Now, Kylie, I tell you that I'm an expert in sports: badminton, soccer, football, baseball, tennis, volleyball, softball, hockey, okay, you name it. I'm an expert. But the only thing I know about is this one player, and everything you talk about, I'm like, oh, that you mean like that one time that Pete Sampras did this, or that one time that Pete Sampras hit the ball like that? That is the man with one book. That is the man who only knows one book and has no other knowledge to his name, okay?
It's like only having a reference on an essay, basically.
So yes, exactly. So do you see the map that I'm placing up for you?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
I thought it would be better to show you. I don't want you to, let's say that all of you died after I taught you this Magnificat. Okay?
That's a great thought.
The minute that we sing it, you all
You're
die.
going to be singing a lot of requiems, Jeff.
Okay, I'm just saying, go with it, go with the analogy, okay? And you've only ever sung one Magnificat by one composer. You've just died and you don't know that much about them. You only know one composer and one Magnificat. So what I thought would be that if I would show you different verses from different composers, you would be able to compare them, okay? Now, Palestrina. Was Palestrina his first name or his last name, Renee?
Last name.
Wrong.
Really?
That's a weird first name.
Luigi.
No.
Well, it's not really his last name. It was just where he was from, the town
Okay.
he was from.
All right.
Oh.
That was a trick question.
That's how they did it back then. Because everybody was named Giovanni. Every single person in Italy was named Giovanni. It seems like. So they all had to differentiate themselves. Giovanni Maria Nannino, Bernardo, Giovanni Nannino, Giovanni Palestrina, Giovanni Guidetti. They were all named Giovanni.
Giovanni.
Is that John in Italian, Matteo?
That's right.
Giovanni is John or Jean in French. Okay.
Mhm.
It seems to have been a very popular name back then. So they called him by the town that he was from, okay? See this town, Palestrina? Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
It's right next to Rome.
Yeah, it's right there.
Where are you from, Matteo?
Oh, you have to go up north. Up.
North? To Lombard?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're from up there?
Oh, yeah. Away from Rome.
Way that way?
Keep going. Yeah. It's not, you see Parma? Parma in the middle. Lower?
Pavia?
No, Parma is P-A, actually, yeah, I wish I could point it out. Let's keep
Well, you're
going
from
down. It's in the
north.
southeast. It's Cremona, which interesting enough, it's the hometown of the violin, the Stradivari violin. So that's where it was invented. Cremona, that's there. There you go.
Now, you've been to Rome, right?
Oh yeah, I lived in Rome. Yeah.
Have you ever been to Palestrina?
No, it's a bit out. It's a small town. Yeah.
Can you see it on the map though?
Yeah, of course.
Why haven't you gone here? No, I'm just kidding.
It's small.
So small.
So I wanted to show you a little bit of a Roman. He's considered a Roman composer, okay, for obvious reasons. But then the other composers are from this place, which Kylie has been to.
Ooh, Spain.
Where did you go in Spain, Kylie?
Where did we go? Sevilla.
No personal information. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
Okay, so you didn't go to Sevilla.
No, I did not.
Okay. Has anyone else been to Spain? Enrique?
No, not to Spain. Oh, actually, yes, I did go to Barcelona.
Oh, okay. Have you been to Spain, Mateo?
No, unfortunately, no.
Okay.
No.
So these other composers, Guerrero was a priest who studied with Morales, who was also a priest, and they worked in Toledo, okay? Now, this is the same question I asked the other people. Most of the research that we have from these composers, how can I put this? Research is not typing into Google, okay? That's not research. What I'm talking about was in the 50s and 60s, there was a man who looked through the part books, the original part books, and assembled the original part books of these composers. No one had ever heard of these composers when this man was alive, okay? That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Googling something for 5 seconds. This person wrote a famous book about these composers before their editions were even available. And my teacher's predecessor was the one who did the complete editions of Morales. Now, this man that I'm talking about was named Stevenson, and he worked at UCLA, which is somewhere around here, right? Has anyone ever been? Raise your hand if you've been to UCLA. Renee, Mateo, Colette. Have you been to UCLA, Kylie?
Yes, I went there.
Oh, you went there to school?
Yes.
Okay, then you've been there.
Go Bruins. Woo! Woo!
So this teacher, this is what I was confused about. How could this teacher who works here do, and actually he worked there, Schoenberg Music Building. How could he do all this research in the 50s and 60s all the way across the globe in Spain and Italy? That was the question. And it turns out, some of you know this because you were in on the other thing. Who was here the other time? Bernadette, do you remember what it was?
Yes.
Okay, state your position.
State where he did it, where he did the research. Mexico City.
Mexico City and South America. And no one here has ever been to South America before, including Enrique. Where are you from in South America, Enrique?
Brazil.
Brazil, okay. So he did a lot of research in Mexico City, the Cathedral of Mexico City. Now, I'm sure that he did at some point travel to Spain and Italy, but most of his stuff was done, he got in his car, and the borders were not as strict in the 50s and 60s, and he drove himself down here to Mexico and South America, okay? And so all his research, like a lot of the research in the score, is from him. He often cites, he says, and this is in manuscripts in Mexico City or other places down here, because that's what he was looking at, okay? Now, the point being, this music was written in the 16th century, so the 1500s, 1550, 1560, 1570, okay? So what does that tell you, Jacqueline, about the type of value that they placed on the music if 100 years after the printing press was invented, they're already shipping scores from Rome and Spain all the way to the New World?
It was highly valued.
I think so. I think it does. Because if you're going on an international trip back then, you had to go by boat, okay? It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun, okay? It was rat infested, there was no food, and there were storms, and it was not fun. Raise your hand if you think international travel in the 1500s was fun. Okay? So you are going to grab the things that are most important to you to take on that boat, okay? So Jacqueline, what would you grab that would be important? Probably some food.
Yeah, I would do food,
a comb,
clothing necessities, a comb, and maybe some books.
Probably a knife.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're a female in the 1500s on a ship.
When you get to where you need to go, you need to be able to find food. You need to be able to kill it with a knife or a trap or a gun or something. But do you see yourself taking huge, heavy books big, huge, heavy books with you on this boat?
I'd probably take the smallest book I could find.
So it's quite remarkable that all this music by Guerrero and Morales was shipped all the way from over here to here in the 1500s. That to me is a remarkable thing, especially since musical taste changed 100 years later. So that's what we're talking about, okay? So now you got a little bit of geography. Now let's go back to the score. Let's see, share screen. Is Josico there?
Yes,
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm sorry I'm late. I just got home from work.
That's okay. That's
And then
okay. I think you've already been to one of these before, right? So you don't even technically need to come, but we're glad that you're here, okay? Now, we have, okay, so we talked about this. So now we need to look at the actual music, okay? So, Sarah, have you said the sentence yet?
I have not, no.
Okay, tell us the sentence.
So in this Magnificat, the composers take mode 7, the mode 7 psalm tone, and they stretched it out and placed it in each different voice with, and then in each successive movement, it gets harder and harder to hear.
Okay. Colette, say the sentence.
In this Magnificat, the composer has taken the mode 7 psalm tone, or composers, and stretched it out over the various voices. And as the intricacy increases towards the end, the psalm tone itself becomes increasingly more difficult.
Okay, what do you mean by stretch it out?
Well, those are your terms, so I'm assuming that you mean by stretching it out is that it's...
I just made it up, right? I went in a time machine back 500 years.
No, it's just been used for the various verses, and then as it progressively develops, it gains complexity and less.
Nope, you're dead wrong.
Relationship to the
You're
song.
dead wrong. You want me to tell you?
No.
Oh, you're going to listen anyway.
End call.
No! No!
You know, joking.
Okay, you just got yourself muted, Grace. Okay. Look, Colette, okay? I'm going to go to movement number 4, okay? And I'm going to sing the tenor for you, okay? Now, Enrique, you sing, actually, yeah, I don't have the score for you here. I'll sing it myself. Colette, normally you would sing it like this. Quia mihi mania, sorry, quia fecit mihi mania qui potens est, et sanctum nomen eius. Okay? Colette, okay?
Yes.
Now, that's how you would normally sing it, okay?
Okay.
But listen to the tenor voice in the way that Morales sets it, okay? Let's see. Quia fecit mihi mania qui potens est. Now, what does it mean when I say they stretch it out?
In that instance, it's seriously stretched out, like it's prolonged over all of the measures.
Exactly. And listen, it goes on. Instead of being et sanctum nomen eius, it goes like this. Et sanctum nomen eius. You see the stretched out stuff?
Yes.
Okay. That is what we are talking about. And you can always tell because it's usually the long notes. So, for example, in the bass section here, instead of just being Surientes implevit bonis. Okay? It sounds like this. Surientes, and then a big pause, and then it goes implevit bonis. You see how that's stretched out? It's not surientes implevit bonis. It's all stretched out. And that's what they do in every movement, with the possible exception of 10. Colette, look at this note. Pair. Do you
Okay.
understand that that is clearly stretched out? The technical term is augmentation.
Huh.
I mean, that's a seriously long note. Right? Or no?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So if you're looking at this, which Colette of these soprano, alto, quintus, tenor, and bass, which one do you think is the one that has the stretched out psalm tone?
Alto.
Alto, exactly. And that is a very good compositional technique, because do you remember the Mozart's definition of counterpoint?
Yes.
Tell me it.
Sorry. Say that again?
Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. What was his definition of counterpoint?
No idea.
You just said you knew it.
No, I thought you said something else. Sorry.
You're just like, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. Okay, good. Okay,
Sorry,
Enrique, do you know it?
Air conditioning came on. I couldn't hear.
Do you know it, Enrique? What did Mozart say about counterpoint? This is the most important thing you'll ever learn.
I'm not sure I remember his sentence.
Enrique. He said, when one voice stands still, the other voice moves. When one voice goes up, the other voice goes
down.
Mozart simplified the rules of counterpoint in a very good way, okay? So what that means is if you have one voice which is standing still, Matteo, sing pair for me.
Oh, yeah, I didn't find a note though.
Doesn't matter, just sing it on any note.
It's one note
Longer,
basically.
longer.
That's it?
So it's just standing still, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you have one note standing still, counterpoint demands that the other voices are moving, okay?
Mm.
That's what sounds good to the human ear. Do you see how you have one voice standing still and the other voice is moving?
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes the music so great, okay? So, we have talked about geography. We've talked about an awful lot. So, Kylie, shall we discuss...
Sorry, I have a screaming child in the background.
It's adorable.
Should we discuss verse 6, verse 8, or verse 10?
Let's do the one verse 10 with soprano and tenor.
Okay, Palestrina. Now, this gets to Colette's point. I took verse 10 from a collection of Magnificats by Palestrina. Now, Bernadette, which mode did I go to find this piece by Palestrina?
Mode 7.
Mode 7, right? How many Magnificats, Bernadette, do composers usually compose? You're Bernadette Rigney, and you're about to compose a series of Magnificats. So how many are you going to compose?
Maybe 1.
Well, what mode are you going to place it in?
I don't know.
Okay, you fail. Josico, how many you are a composer and you're going to compose Magnificats. Do you seriously not care what Magnificat you're going to write in, Bernadette?
No, because I'm not a composer.
You know what, Bernadette, actually there are composers who wrote Magnificats that combine all the different modes. But that happened later on, so we don't talk about that. Okay, Josico, how many Magnificats are you going to write? Bernadette doesn't care. She's can't be interested, can't be bothered. How many are you going to write, How many are you going to write, Josico?
I don't know. I don't even write one.
Well, how many church modes are there?
7.
Is she right, Renee?
No, there's one more. 8. Well, actually, yeah, there's 8.
There's 8 church modes. Okay, so Josico, how many Magnificats are you going to compose? Josico?
Sorry, I missed it. The signal was in and out. What was the question again?
The signal was in and out, huh? Josico, there's 8 church modes. How many Magnificats are you going to compose?
I'll do 8.
Okay, and what would be the advantage of that, Jacqueline?
You have a Magnificat for every church mode.
Exactly. So if the Feast of St. Peter and Paul uses mode 2, are you prepared?
Yes.
Jacqueline. If Easter uses mode 3, are you prepared?
Yes.
Grace, if Pentecost uses mode 4, are you prepared?
Yes.
Yeah. So when these composers write Magnificats, they actually do 16, and let me tell you why. If you notice, this setting that we're doing is only the odd numbers, right? Or the even numbers, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, correct?
Yeah.
Mateo?
Yes.
It goes plain song polyphony, plain song polyphony, plain song polyphony, plain song polyphony, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so they usually do 16 because they do 8 that are odd and 8 that are even. Does that make sense, Mateo?
Yeah.
Okay, so Bernadette, am I or am I not a genius for grabbing this from Palestrina?
I'd say yes.
No, the correct answer is no. Because all I did was go into his Magnificats and find what?
Mode 7.
Yes, mode 7. And did I find the odd or the even?
Let me see. I can't really read it.
We're doing the, number 10.
Even.
Even. So why does that make me a genius for doing that? It doesn't. It's simple, right? Bernadette?
Yes.
There's nothing, it's not hard to do, right?
No.
I mean, you can grab Magnificats from anyone you want. You could grab them. We talked about Orlando de Lassus. You remember how many he wrote? Renee, how many Magnificats did Orlando de Lassus compose?
I do not know.
200.
Wow.
So it's not a big deal to go grab these pieces. There's plenty of them out there. Now, granted, I chose very special pieces for various particular reasons, but in general, it's not rocket science to combine the Magnificats. Does that make sense? Now, if I were somebody like Colette, I'd probably combine like mode 4 this with mode 3 that, and mode 2 this with mode 7 that. That would be a disaster. You have to stay in the church mode, okay? And how many church modes are there, Josico?
8.
8, okay? So let's look at what Palestrina did. Palestrina did something a little bit different than the other composers, which I suppose somebody could make the argument it's because he's not from Spain. what would mitigate against that argument, Renee?
I don't understand the question.
Well, if somebody says, well, Palestrina's is a little bit, he treats it a little bit different, that's because he's from Rome and not Spain. Why is that a fallacious argument?
Well, I mean,
Because Palestrina wrote tons and tons of Magnificats.
Hmm.
Wouldn't we have to look at all of what he did before we just blanketly say, well, it's because he's Roman?
Hmm.
I mean, I would want to see a lot more of his pieces before I just say, well, it's because he's Roman. These other guys are Spain. Call it a day. So Kylie has selected this one that we look at, okay? Let's have Jacqueline read what it says right there. Can you see what I have highlighted?
Yes. So you want me to read that whole bit?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The following verse, verse number 10, comes from Palestrina's collection of Magnificat settings, published in Rome in 1591 AD. There's nothing wrong with what Father Guerrero wrote for verse number 10, but now you can compare what other composers did. The plain song melody is more or less used in canon at the unison, soprano and tenor.
Okay. Matteo, read this part.
An organist, singer, and famed composer, Palestrina, that 1594, uses the mode 7 psalm tone as the basis for this movement, but does so differently than Father Morales or Father Guerrero. Carefully study the accepts and see whether you agree that they come from plain song, then notice them as you sing them. For the record, that 1570s was a difficult for Palestrina. He lost his brother, 2 of his sons, and his first wife in 3 separate outbreaks of the plague, 1572, 1575, and 1580, respectively.
Okay. I stuck that in there because of COVID. All right. So Matteo has just told us that Matteo claims that, hold on a second here. It's supposed to be based on mode 7, okay? So let's take a look at this. I know you're all dying for this. I know you're all dying to do this. Kylie, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you about what I'm about to tell you?
Oh, I'm a 10.
Okay. So, the plain song, see, I wrote out the plain song for you, see? It goes, Sicut locutus est ad patres nostros. Enrique, sing that.
Sicut locutus est ad patres nostros.
And Matteo, sing that.
Sicut Okay. Sicut locutus. Can I hear again?
Enrique, give it to him again.
Sicut locutus est ad patres nostros.
Sicut locutus est ad patres nostros.
Good. Jacqueline, you sing it. Good. Josico, you sing it. Bernadette, you sing it. Okay, now we need to see if the Palestrina matches that, okay? Palestrina is Sicut locutus est ad patres nostros. Now, Renee, did you hear it or not?
No.
You didn't hear it. Okay, I think if you sing it a lot and if you look at it carefully, I strongly believe that you will hear it. Does that make sense?
It's embellished.
It's highly embellished.
Well, as you said, it gets more difficult to hear as the further you go along.
Yes, but in particular, the fact that you have this other melody that goes ad patres nostros. I had to really think hard about that, and it really struck me that it really is Patres Nostros. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But he's embellishing it. And if I had a student, I wouldn't necessarily count him wrong for not realizing it, because once it gets embellished a fair amount, it's hard to hear, okay? But I think there's no question that Palestrina was, in fact, I mean, look, the chant starts out, C, right? Right, Grace?
Yeah.
And Palestrina's first notes are Sicut, right? Sicut lo. He just embellishes it a little bit. Anyway, that's what I think is happening, okay? Let's look at the other part and see if you agree with this. On a scale of 1 to 10, Kylie, how excited are you about what I'm about to tell you?
Well, now I'm a 9.5.
9.5.
Okay, Kylie, just for that, you sing Abraham et semini eius in secula. Sing that.
Hold on, where on the page? There, okay. Abraham et semini eius secula.
Good. Sarah, you sing it.
Someone's throwing out a pitch.
Okay, good. Now, Renee, listen to this. Et semini eius in secula. What do you think of that? Does that sound like it?
Yes.
Okay. So you agree with the second part, but not the first part.
I changed my mind on the first part, but it was hard initially to hear it.
Yeah, he embellished the living daylights out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to really listen to it in context to come to the conclusion that I did, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But you agree there's no question about the second part, right?
Correct.
Now, Grace, why is this not a perfect canon?
Why is it not a perfect canon?
Are the soprano and the tenor identical?
No.
What's different?
The tenors are starting first and they're elongating the et, while sopranos start a little bit after. Well, it starts once they end. And they don't elongate it.
And then what else?
What else is different?
What else, Colette? Did we lose Colette?
Muted. But in also.
Move the screen.
I'm highlighting it for you, Colette. I'm helping you, man.
Oh, I thought you had already covered that. So at the very end, the last note is one is a half note and the other one is, oh no, excuse me, one is a whole note and the other one is a quarter note.
Exactly, but they're close enough, wouldn't you agree?
Well,
they're not perfect. It's not a perfect canon, but it's
not a
pretty close.
perfect
I was going to say, unless you're somebody like Colette, you're going to say that it's not exactly perfect, but it's pretty close. Wouldn't you agree?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's identical except for like one note value.
All right.
That is close enough. So what I did was, to make life easy for y'all, I'm not hearing anybody thank me.
Thank you.
I scooted over the tenor and the soprano so you could see them. But in reality, do you see that they start at different times? Soprano starts here, the tenor starts here.
Yikes.
Enrique, do you see that? Why are you not thanking me for making that clear up there?
Thanks for making that clear, Jeff.
Okay. It's a lot easier to see, isn't it, when they're put right above each other, right? Like this? Right?
Yeah.
Sure.
But in the piece, they start at different times, okay? So, the only other thing I would say about this is Palestrina, let's see, who hasn't read yet? Josico.
Yeah.
Read this little box here.
Is ascending, free counter melody, free meanings, not derived from the plain song, occurs at least 5 times. Is that the one? you want?
Yes. So what is a free counter melody, Josico? What is a free counter melody, Mateo?
Free. Counter melody is like.
Josico just read it to you.
No. Oh, not derived from the plain song. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Are you not? Do you not pay attention when Josico's speaking?
Yeah. No, I was thinking about the counter melody, not the free.
Josico, he was paying attention to you. He just got distracted. So free meaning what, Mateo?
Not derived from the plain song, which I guess is like added.
Right, but what plain song? Derived from what plain song? What does that mean? Right, what plain song? Adoro te devote, Ave Maristella. What is it talking about?
Well, the Magnificat.
What's our sentence?
Yeah.
What's our sentence?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like,
Well,
I'm not sure which plain song is.
Say our sentence. What's our sentence?
Our sentence, the original sentence that we talked.
Yeah.
You said
The sentence that we've got to learn before we go.
I remember it. 7. Oh, sorry. I don't remember it. Sorry, I gotta remember.
Mateo.
I know. I should have written it down.
Okay, pick somebody to help you, Mateo. Who's going to help you?
Okay.
Pick somebody. Somebody
Let's
smart.
see.
Pick somebody really smart.
Yeah.
Grace.
Oh, I'm so sorry, my friend.
Great.
No.
The composer,
What's the sentence?
the composer of this piece,
Yeah.
took the Churchtown 7,
Touch it out.
Mode 7 psalm tone.
Mode 7 psalm tone. Sorry, I'm getting all the tones mixed up, and augmented it throughout the song,
Yes.
and placed it into each of the parts,
Yep.
with it becoming harder the longer it goes on.
Okay, Mateo, you picked well. She got it perfectly, okay?
Cool.
So now
Can I do it
you
in a
know what,
second?
Mateo, do you say the sentence, Mateo?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, the author of the music stretched the 7th tone song. Sorry, the 7th church song.
Psalm tone 7.
Psalm tone 7. Stretched it through all the different parts. Augmented it,
Yep.
and so it becomes more complicated as the song goes on.
Okay, so when this says this is not derived from the plain song, it's not derived from what? It doesn't come from
The chant.
the chant being which chant?
Mode 7.
Mode 7 tone, right?
Mode 7 tone mode.
How many do you have? Just 2.
Thank you for the help, Colette.
Sorry.
Is someone's house loud?
He's so cute.
Oh, we got somebody coming in here now. Is that
John needs to mic his mute. Mute his mic.
that was it, John Rigney. I don't know what that sound was, but it's muted now. Who is that over there? The person that I accidentally hurt your foot?
What?
Yes, that's me.
But why does it say Ken?
Because it's my husband's Zoom account.
Okay, but I can't call you Ken.
No, it's Christine.
That's right, Christine Watanabe.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Okay, you're coming in a little bit late, so.
Yes, I was at dance class. Sorry.
That's all right. Some of the people might have to help you out a little bit, okay? We're talking about Palestrina's setting of this verse, and Josico says it's a free counter melody, and Mateo says that it is not derived from Psalm tone 7. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so is Palestrina allowed to do that? Is he allowed to add free counter melodies at will?
Of course, he did it.
He is. He and I've seen that in his masses, the mass that we sang at the symposium a couple of years ago. It seems to me that Palestrina gets bored after a little bit, and he likes to add little counter melodies after a while. See, he's not content. He's not content with only the plain song.
Yeah, well, it's just all the embellishments in that one line you showed too. It's very reminiscent of a lot of folk music. The artists will do that. They'll make different embellishments off of the plain tune.
Yes, but it makes it hard for us to analyze it, though. So Palestrina is allowed to do that, okay? So before we go, we have to know the sentence, but we can look at one more thing. We've looked at this one an awful lot with the other groups. We could do, Kylie, do you want to do verse 6 or verse 8?
Let's do verse 6.
Okay, verse
So
6.
it's easier to hear it.
Okay, can you read this, Kylie?
Yes. Hold on. Those who sing Renaissance music have freedom with regard to text underlay for 3 reasons. 1, it is difficult to ascertain the composer's intentions. 2, the part books are not always clear. 3, composers showed flexibility. Verse 6 below is an excellent example, and the editor has changed text underlay based on his study of the part books, which are conveniently printed on the opposite page.
Okay, how do we know the editor is a he?
Because he was your editor, your professor.
Me. No, it's me.
Yeah.
I did this.
Oh, it's you. Sorry.
Okay, just checking. Okay, Dr. Owen Reese, go ahead.
Dr. Owen Reese, professor at Oxford, in 2017 published Reworking in the Motets of Francisco Guerrero, a marvelous document, and 2 of his examples, 1,555, verse 1, etc., are provided.
It's the editions of 1555 and 1570.
Oh,
and
okay.
1555 versus 1589.
Got it. Are provided. Sometimes text underlay is puzzling.
Oh, that's a typo, isn't it? That should be text underlay. Oops.
Okay. I thought it sounded a little funny.
Sorry. It should be text underlay.
Are you okay, Zita? Yeah, okay. Is puzzling. Example, Mississauga Regina by Victoria seems to demand different pronunciations of Kyrie eleison in the same movement. Yet sometimes it could not be more simple. Example, the bass line for verse 8.
Okay, let's look at that. It says the bass line for verse 8 could not be more simple. So bass line for verse 8. Let's look at that. Bass line for verse 8. It says, that's me talking, so I say, I guess, it could not be more simple, okay? Let's find out if I was in fact deceptive, okay? Let's see here. No, there we go. Bass line for verse 8. So who wants to talk to me about this? Renee.
Yeah.
Why would it say that this could not be more simple?
I'm trying to find it on my page here because I'm having trouble seeing that here.
Can you see it off mine?
Yeah. Well, it's like just scales.
Well,
much.
it's actually, anyone else want to tell me? Sarah? Text underlay. Why does it say that it could not be more simple?
We're talking about the text underlay. Why the text couldn't be more simple? How it's
Why is this an example? This example, it says this one is an example where it couldn't be more simple.
Because you have a note for every syllable.
Exactly right. Exactly right. How did you know that? How come you're so smart?
I don't know.
You're older than Jacqueline?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Jacqueline, you need to learn like that when you get older, okay? That's exactly right. Can you say it again, Sarah?
Yeah, the text underlay couldn't be more simple because there is a note for every syllable. It's
yeah, it's te, suri, and tes. Implevit bonis et divites rest. Dimisiti nanes. Dimisiti nanes. See how that is?
So just because the word isn't necessarily like printed spaced up or spaced out, I mean.
I mean, how else
you
are you
can
going
tell.
to text underlay this, Sarah? You have rests before and you have rests afterwards. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes, right? Esurientes. 5 syllables, right? So how else are you going to text underlay it? I mean, you couldn't do it.
No.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
Kylie, how else would you do this one? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes. You have rests before, rests afterwards. This one is implevit bonis, 5 syllables.
Right.
So do you see how that's considered an easy text underlay?
Yes, definitely.
Implevit bonis, except they're very, very long notes, aren't they? These
Yes.
are very long notes, extremely long notes. And why are they long, Josico? Do you remember the sentence?
Hang on. Hello.
Remember the sentence?
Extend. Extend.
Yeah, but why? Jacqueline, let's see if you're as smart as your sister. Why are they long notes? Very long notes.
Because in this Magnificat, the composers took the Psalm tone 7 and stretched it out in the different
Exactly.
voice parts.
Okay. Renee, augment Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Mary.
Slower. Slower.
Mary.
Even slower. The idea behind augmentation is you can't even hear the melody anymore. Do it real slow.
Mary.
Yeah, but I would go even slower. Here, what are you on? You know, can you imagine a long note, and then a sub melody? That's what it's all about. Sarah, augment Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Aha. Twinkle, twinkle.
No. So,
You want me to go every note slower?
So you gotta let it be very long, and you can have counter melodies. Or something like that.
Okay.
It's very stretched out. Try it.
Okay, I'm gonna do Latin this time. Wait.
You get the idea?
It's a long day.
Okay.
It doesn't sound like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. You can tell I couldn't.
Well, you can just barely hear it. That's what makes it so cool. That's what makes it so beautiful, that you can barely hear it. Now, the other thing about that is, we don't know that they might have even used instruments for some of those lines. If you had an instrument, you could keep it going even longer, which is kind of cool. But do you all understand what it means to stretch out a line?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening in this piece, okay? Now, let's go on more about the text underlay. When the text underlay has freedom, the editor here, who's the editor, Kylie?
You are.
The editor has kindly, they never do this, by the way. They usually say, go look in this book and look on page 1000 and compare it to this other book and look on page 50. I placed it right next to you so you can see it, and nobody's thanking me for it. See how you can see the comparison? Look what he did. Guerrero printed it this way. And then he changed it later. Crazy, right? In 1555 AD, it was Pescatores hominum. In 1570, he changed it to Pescatores hominum. Interesting, right? Change the note values and change the words. And so you meet these people. Kylie might have met them before. Renee might have met them before. These certain musicians who come to you and say, this right here is the only right thing. Oh, wait a second. Hold on a second. Where we go? There we go. They'll say, this right here is the only right thing and anything else is wrong. Right? We know musicians like that. But Guerrero himself changed it later on. So the person who said that that was the only right way of doing it is in fact wrong. And then sometimes they get themselves in real boxes and they say, well, then Guerrero made a mistake. So no. And we could show you other examples too where he changed it here. The words he changed, okay? Now, before we go, let's finish reading this and make sure we all know the sentence and we'll call it a day. John Rigney.
Yes.
Go ahead and read. Scholars are divided.
Scholars are divided on whether the text underlay was done by the composer or the publisher. Jane Bernstein says, a reader would check one of the earliest sheets pulled from the press, the printer, or a professional proofreader knowledgeable in music. Presumably did this task for many of the music editions, particularly the anthologies. But a composer or his representative was usually responsible for correcting commissioned publications of his own works. She gives two examples where proofreading was undertaken by a surrogate because the composer himself could not be present.
Okay, hold on a second. Now, what does that mean, Colette? What's all that mean? What is all that?
So there is some ambiguity. There's some knowledge gap as to whether or not when somebody published something written by one of the composers, whether or not they changed it in the publishing process or whether or not the composer decided to do that.
But what's Jane Bernstein saying?
Oh,
in her opinion, she's saying, how did it work?
So in her opinion,
you're reading it as fast as you can.
my air conditioning just came on, so I don't know.
What does she say happened?
She says that it was done by somebody else other than the composer, because she has two examples.
A reader, right? Or his representative.
Right.
Okay, let's go find out what else is happening. Jacqueline, Richard Agee, I guess. Read from there.
Richard Agee.
Hold on a second, we lost you.
Okay.
There we go. Go ahead.
Okay. Richard Agee, University of Rochester Press, 1998, says, while music historians might be drawn to the possibility of extensive composer collaboration with in-house editing and printing houses, it is most likely that the printers themselves, who would be forced to reset the type of any portions of the book found objectionable by the composer, would have wanted as little interference as necessary after they had received a fair copy of the music.
Okay, now, what does that mean, Kylie?
that the publisher is the one that did it. So Zita has an answer too. Because they didn't want anyone messing it, so they would try and be the last person to touch it.
Yeah, so when I told you this example up here, what could you have said to me?
Sorry, I'm not following.
When I made a huge deal about the fact that he changed something, what could you have said to me?
Well, it probably wasn't him that changed it.
But see, musicologists don't like to accept that possibility. We don't like that possibility, but it is a possibility, and it makes sense because proofreading is a pain. Changing, you had to type it in like this into metal backwards to print something. You had to punch it in with a knife backwards and upside down, and to change that is a massive pain, a massive headache. So in essence, musicologists are always going to try to, they want to know everything, and they think they know everything, and they want to say that the composer did something, but the reality is there's no guarantee that the composer had anything to do with this. Now let's see what else it says before we go here. I wonder how to pronounce his name. Agi? Agi?
Agi.
Agi. Agi.
Agi.
All right, let's see what else Agi says. Grace.
Oh no.
Although he cites possible involvement.
Though he cites possible involvement by the composer in the editing process in the cases of editions of
Cipriano de Rore.
Cipriano de Rore, Gioseffo Zarlino, and Orlando de
Hold on
la...
a second. How do you pronounce that name, Matteo?
Josefo.
What's that?
Josefo Zarlino.
Josefo. Is that Jeff?
It's Joseph.
Oh, I
It's
thought
like the Italianized version of Joseph, but it doesn't exist anymore. Nobody's called like that.
Oh, I thought it was Jeff Zarlino.
Definitely.
God,
Joseph Zarlino.
Joseph Zarlino. Okay, just say Joseph Zarlino.
And Orlando de la Sous nevertheless concludes that as standard practice, it would appear that composers rarely participated in the proofreading process.
Aha! Kylie, your supposition and Zita's supposition is backed up. Is it not?
It is, unfortunately for the composer.
Okay, read that again, Ken. As standard practice. Where's Christine Watanabe? Is she there? Christine? Oh no, we lost her. Okay, read that crucial sentence again, Sarah. As standard practice.
As standard practice, it would appear that composers rarely participated in the proofreading process.
Oh, my heart. Oh, my heart. Okay, go on. I hate hearing that. I don't like to hear that. Go on.
But Tess Knighton, Bulletin of Spanish Studies 2012, emphasizes the evidence from Spanish printing contracts which say, quote, it was the composer who was responsible for proofreading and corrections. Unquote.
Ah, okay. Renee, what does that mean?
Well, that the composer made the change, but I'm thinking he may have just shirked, he may not have been involved anyway. Doesn't.
It says above he could have had his representative, right?
Right.
But what do they know about music?
Who knows?
And how would you even mail a letter back then in 1550?
Yeah.
How could you even mail a letter? You can't. Okay, so who wants to read my sentence here? Kylie. Read what it says when it says, when we consider. This is Jeff talking. This is Gioseffo Ostrowski talking.
When we consider the utter perfection of the Renaissance compositions, it is somewhat difficult to accept that composers such as Guerrero did not care whether their scores were reproduced accurately. It would be like suggesting that Michelangelo never bothered to pop his head into the Sistine Chapel to see how the ceiling came out.
Okay.
That makes sense.
That's a brilliant little statement, no?
Yeah.
I love that statement.
Sounds like a statement that you do to reassure yourself of something.
Okay, so the bottom line is this, folks. Where it leaves us in general, the editor, in this case me, will generally accept what other editors have done, okay? But in this particular case, there seemed such egregious errors. What I did, I actually looked at the actual part books, which you can see here. Do you see the part books? What letter is that, Josico? What letter is that?
I missed it. Where is it?
In the part book. What letter is this in the part book?
The one on the top? Oh. Is it F?
Yeah, it's F. And these are the part books. These are the part books from 1560. I looked at them and I decided that I just couldn't accept what the editor had done, so I changed it, okay? And look at how I verified it. Here, I'll have Kylie read this again. Read how I verified it, Kylie.
Non-show Alvarez confirmed April 3rd, 2020. His source book was copied from a modern Spanish book full of typos, errors, and mistakes. Text underlay for soprano seems poor.
Yeah. So raise your hand if you think I was not justified in fixing the text underlay.
Well,
John Rigney, how did I know? How did I know? So in light of what I just taught you with this paragraph, who is going to be angry that it's not taken from the edition? Nobody, right?
Did you find a lot of
What's that?
Did you find a lot of mistakes doing this?
I mean, it's a very short movement. It's only like 20 measures. But yeah, I just found it, I mean, you can look at it yourself and see if it makes sense to you. Fecit potentiam in brachiosu. It breaks a neum, it breaks all kinds of stuff. I just didn't like it at all. Especially this part here. In brachiosu. Just didn't like it. Didn't sound natural to me. So I went to the part books themselves. But I guess why I'm happy is because when I told Nancho about it, he said that the book was full of typos, errors, and mistakes. So it was probably somebody like Colette who just did a real half-hearted, you know, just get it out the door kind of a job on it, you know. So anyway, this is we won't talk about every movement. There's a lot more that we could talk about. We could talk about all kinds of stuff. I even gave you examples at the very end of other Magnificats, as you can see. Okay, then you can study that as well, just so that you wouldn't think that these are the only Magnificats in the world. I gave you Victoria, I gave you Lassus, and that's a cool thing. We have, wow, we're almost over time. Okay, we'll just do one more thing before we go. Kylie, are you responsible for learning this page?
Say that again. Am I responsible for what?
For learning how to sing this page.
Sorry. Gita says no.
Where is Jordan in all this? Why is Jordan not relieving?
He's working.
Uh-oh, the old I'm working. Okay. Are you responsible for learning this song that I'm looking at right now?
That page, maybe not. I know the whole piece overall we're supposed to be learning, yes.
Are you responsible for learning this, Kylie?
No,
Oh.
that looks old.
This is only here so that you can look at it and learn from it, okay? Kylie?
Okay, sorry, I was muted again.
Because the thing is, then I don't want you to think that, I know that you're going to be curious about other composers, so I wanted to satiate your desire to learn about other composers. Okay?
Okay.
Now,
Sorry, that okay was for Zita.
now, Jacqueline, the tenor line has the psalm tone mode 7 in an augmented way. Sicut locutus est ad patres nostros, in very, very slow note values. Are you surprised by that?
No.
Why are you not surprised by that?
Because it's better when you're writing counterpoint.
Because we just looked at a whole bunch of examples that do the exact same thing, right?
Yeah.
Is Lassus, let me put it a different way. Is Lassus the only composer ever alive who has ever taken the psalm tone 7, augmented it, and placed it in the tenor? Yes or no, Jacqueline?
No.
Who else has done it?
Guerrero, Palestrina.
Morales.
Okay. Okay, so you're not surprised by this, right? You've seen this before, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Ken, just kidding. 15.
Yes.
Victoria was a Spanish priest, and he takes the psalm tone mode 7 and places it in augmentation in the middle voice. Do you see that long note?
Yes.
Are you surprised by his treatment in the Magnificat of this?
No.
Why are you not surprised by this? Is he the only one who's ever done this?
No, and I wouldn't be surprised by it anyway. I just take things as I find them.
Just respond as I want you to.
I agree with that logic, though.
Why are you not surprised by his treatment? He takes mode 7, he stretches it out. Look at how he stretches it out.
Mm-hmm.
He stretches it out in one of the voices and writes a masterpiece based on it.
Yep.
You're not surprised by this. Who else has done it?
No. Lots of other people.
Such as?
Well, this was who? This was Victoria?
Yes.
Okay, so it's De Lassus and Palestrina and Morales and Guerrero,
Okay.
Etcetera, Etcetera.
What was Palestrina to Victoria?
Student, teacher? I don't remember.
Look up at the top of the page.
Okay. Yeah, teacher.
Okay. That's right. And there's a rumor, I don't know if it's true or not, but they say that Victoria was jealous. I'm sorry, that Palestrina was jealous of Victoria's first drafts as a student. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what they say.
Not a very Christian attitude.
Well, in a good way. In a good way.
Just kind of like, I wish my first drafts were that
I mean,
good.
Victoria was absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So we could have done Magnificats by him as well. So anyway, this is what we're learning. This is what our choir is learning. And hopefully you have some idea of what the piece is all about now. And it's not just meaningless notes. Does that make sense, Matteo?
Yes, makes sense.
When you're learning it, you can listen for what?
Well, it's also seven song tones.
Mode 7 psalm tone, right?
7 song, yes.
Unfortunately, the basses only get it one time, but they have some other cool stuff too, okay?
Oh, good.
They get it in verse 8. You guys are the ones who get it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you can listen for, and so forth and so on. And Grace, are you going to start listening to this?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the only way I could really learn it is by listening to it.
Okay. And does anyone have any favorite movements of this piece yet? Has anyone listened to this piece yet?
Nope.
Okay. Just let me know as you're learning it, what your favorite movements are, because they're all very different. I mean, in a certain way, they're exactly the same, but in another way, they're quite different. Okay. All right. Well, I think I've persecuted you enough now, because this is a lot of heavy duty stuff that I'm tossing at you, and I can already see that Kylie's getting irritated by it.
You can see Kylie?
So I'll leave you in peace. But the idea is that, why does Kylie have her hand up? What does that hand mean?
What? I don't. Oh, you asked me to raise my hand at one point. So there's a raise hand option. So
I just lowered your hand. It says lower hand, so I physically lowered your hand.
My arm is so tired. But acknowledge me.
Cool. I thought you were giving me the hand.
Okay. High five.
I'll leave you in peace. Like I say, Jacqueline's getting irritated by this. Sarah's had enough. So, but the idea was to show you the piece, what goes into it, so it's not a bunch of meaningless notes. Okay, and it's a beautiful piece. It's a challenging piece. I'm a little bit worried about us learning it, but we just have to. It's good to have challenges. Okay, so look at it if you can. You know, it is a hard piece, but it's not a long piece. It's only like 5 minutes. So please do look at it. And the tenors have such a great part where you get to sing the mode 7 psalm tone, okay? And we all know the sentence, right? Everybody said the sentence, pretty much?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know, what's that song? If you don't know it by now, you ain't never gonna know it. So hopefully you know the sentence by now, okay? Okay, God bless.
God bless you. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.